There's a reason heart disease is still the #1 killer, and it's not because we can't stop it. It's because most people don't know it's already started. At ClearCardio, we're done waiting for the heart attack. The Pulse is our weekly newsletter, real talk, cutting-edge science, and simple actions to detect plaque early, reverse disease, and stay in the game for decades. This isn't fluff. It's for the proactive people who take prevention seriously. If that's you, subscribe now. Be informed, be proactive, and never get blindsided by something you could have stopped. What's going on with you? I'm like, what are you talking about? I feel great.
Yeah.
I'm like tired, whatever. He goes, you need to come see me. We were like, I think it's time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's time. I think we rode that.
Yeah.
We rode that pony a long time.
Yeah.
You know, and it was so sad. What you're seeing here is behind the curtain. You're looking at medicine in 30 years. And immediately I got very angry.
Yeah. Welcome to the show, everyone. Today's guest is JD Enright. JD is a globally recognized leader in AI-driven healthcare and high-performance computing. With over 30 years of experience, JD has built and led industry-changing companies at the intersection of biotechnology, defense operations, AI, and next-generation computing and data center cooling technology. After his own experiences with the shortcomings in critical medical care, JD is currently president and CEO of ClearCardio, LLC, a pioneering company focused on AI-based heart disease detection and treatment, bringing proactive, personalized, and precise cardiovascular care to the forefront of modern medicine. I'm excited to have JD on the show today to share how his team is tackling outdated medical industry thinking and systems and applying leading-edge technology to change the world one life at a time. And with that, JD Enright, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. It's great to be here on Return to Authenticity podcast.
It's thrilling to have you here as a guest. I know you got a super impressive background, and I'm honored to have you here, man. We're going to chop it up and talk all about it. So welcome to the show, and
Thanks.
Appreciate you.
Feelings mutual.
Absolutely. So let's talk a bit about childhood for you, JD. Growing up, how did you get, you're a super successful business guy. Where did it start for you? What was the childhood like for you?
Born in Massachusetts, from Boston originally.
Red Sox fan, Bruins,
Well,
anything?
I've just never been a big sports fan.
Okay,
and I know everybody who watches your podcast who's from Boston is going to hate me right now.
That's all right. That's all right. That's okay.
But yeah, I was just more of an academic kind of. I like to play the sports.
Okay.
But I wasn't a big sports.
What did you play growing up? What was the?
I played baseball, a little bit of football, things like that.
Right on. Cool. All right. So a little bit of sporty kid. Did you do anything?
I was a runner too. I ran a lot.
Oh.
Yeah.
Distance, speed?
Yeah, a little bit of both. 10Ks, marathons, things like that.
Oh, dang.
I did an Ironman once.
Nice.
Yeah.
Which Ironman did you do?
On the Cape, Massachusetts. It was called Splash.
Right on.
Yeah. So it was a swim, bike run.
Yeah. I did a bit of a triathlon myself.
Yeah.
Built up to I did a half Ironman back in 2008.
Okay.
Down in Texas, but
it's awesome.
Dude, it is awesome.
Yeah.
Triathlon,
it's hard.
It's hard. Triathlon, I never felt as fit as when I was training for triathlon. Even training marathons and all that, because you get sort of so, it's so specific to one thing that you get into that singular plane, everything can get a little wonky.
Yeah.
But when you're triathlon, you're so balanced.
Yeah.
All the different parts.
And you're laser focused. And so it gives you more discipline than you would normally have, right? So
for sure,
diet, exercise, your regimen,
sleep.
Getting up earlier, sleeping, not going out and partying, things like that. You really start focused because I'm a competitive guy. So
the workouts stack up, right?
Yeah.
That if you're trying to get in at least 2, maybe 3 of each discipline, so you're looking at somewhere between 6 and 9 workouts in a week. And for me, I would try to take at least 1 day of full rest or recovery. So that's 6 days trying to get in somewhere between 6 and 9 workouts. So you got some days you're doing 2 and 3 workouts. It's a lot.
Yeah.
Right?
The hardest for me was the swim.
Yeah.
Right.
Same.
Because it's always harder in growing up in New England.
Yeah.
And swimming in the North Atlantic, it's cold.
Yeah.
Right. And so and it's wavy, and you're swallowing salt water, and
yeah. Did you do a lot of open water swimming too?
Yeah.
Did you for the training? Yeah.
Well, I went to Mass Maritime Academy. And so
right
I was
on. We're going to get into that. All right, right on.
So I spent a lot of time in the water.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, fantastic. Well, before we get to that, because I know that's a little later in your story.
Yeah, way ahead.
Talk a bit about, so what was your family life like? You said you were an academic kid growing up in Boston. Kind of what else?
So I come from a pretty traditional New England family.
Yeah.
My mother and father, Boston people. So kind of generational, like way back. So on my mother's side, we're members of the Revolution. Sons and daughters of the American Revolution.
Right on.
And also there's members of my family who were inducted into Mayflower Society. So
wow, it's like a generational family.
Yeah.
How far back? You go all the way back to the beginning.
All the way back to the beginning.
You track it back there.
Yeah,
right?
all the way back to like the first ones that came over in the boat and landed in Plymouth.
Nice.
Yeah.
Man, I love that part of the country. I mean, I have spent some time in Boston. I've worked for some Boston-based companies, and then I've been up there for the marathon and run the marathon and that, and it's a fabulous to see the history of the country.
Yeah.
The first couple of times I was there, you just start to go, man, I mean, there's the Old North Church. I mean, there's, all these things, right?
Yes.
There's Boston Harbor,
Yes.
and you're like, this is where the country was
Yeah,
born.
the Tea Party and
Tea
all.
Party,
yes,
right?
exactly, and
It's-
Paul Revere and all.
Right, and his ride and all that. It's a fabulous
I grew
city.
up there, so it's, for me, it was like an everyday thing, surrounded by that history, and it's quite remarkable just to know that that's where this whole country started.
Yeah.
And everything just migrated west.
Right.
Yeah.
The age of the buildings, the streets, you're like, man, this stuff's hundreds of years old.
Yeah.
It's not like, in Texas, we're newer, right?
Yeah.
Things haven't been here nearly as long. So
try driving around downtown Boston, around Haymarket and Quincy Market. It's awful.
yeah, right. Yeah.
Cobblestone road still, and
Rough cobblestone.
It's a pinwheel, so it's like lots of one ways. So you go the wrong, you're done for. Yeah.
Right. The North End, great Italian food in the North End.
Absolutely. Yeah,
fabulous.
absolutely.
Love going down there.
Fantastic.
And the people are so, it's an interesting culture, but I find you don't have the accent. I'm not picking up on the heavy Boston accent. So
park the car and have it yet.
Yeah.
I've been there.
Parked
what I'm saying? I can go there if you
can
want
go there
to.
if you want, right?
Yeah.
We get there
a
quick.
Boston boy, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, but no,
I love it.
A lot of travel academy worked on that and
on.
Stuff like that.
Very good. Yeah. All right, cool. All right, so did you know, like, I'm going to go to college? You had that in your plan? Was it something that you were planning?
I knew I was going to do something like that.
Yeah.
I knew I just never felt comfortable, like just hanging out.
Yeah,
that wasn't my scene. I always wanted to do something, and get a lot of criticism for that actually.
Yeah,
early
you
on.
do take it.
Yeah, early on because I just was interested in different things.
Yeah,
and I always thought that there was a lot more in the world out there that was supposed to be done.
Yeah,
that me hanging out was not going to be the thing. I was like,
Right. So you had to kind of make some choices.
Yeah, I was always running to something, and I never knew what it was. But
Interesting.
It wasn't where I was. It was always, how am I going to solve the world's problems kind of thing.
Interesting.
Strange, yeah.
Right on. Yeah. And you were an academic kid, so you were a pretty high ranked student kind of thing, or? Actually,
no. I was academic in the fact that I read incessantly, everything I can get my hands on. I like to memorize things.
Right.
Phone numbers and record albums. I remember when I was 4 or 5, it was like a joke. I have 6 brothers and 1 sister.
Okay.
And so a large family.
Roman Catholic.
A little bit of everything
Absolutely.
kind of, actually.
Okay, all right, fair enough.
We got a little of both sides.
Okay,
that's controversial.
Okay,
but
fair enough.
But, there's a lot of that in everybody's family. But, mom and dad, very different backgrounds. But, but they came together and made some magic. So, so I was, there was a joke that people would come over to the house parties, whatever. My mother and father would entertain it quite a bit. And, when I was just a little kid, they would say, 3 or 4 years old, go pick out, this album out of this massive stack of records. And I could go pick out the records, and I could remember all my aunt and uncles and cousins' phone numbers and stuff like that. And so it's just, I was a kind of a weird dude that way. But I wouldn't say I was it wasn't like I, was out there trying to get like 4.0, 4.5. I was just thinking about other things. So.
Yeah, I got it. Would you say now in kind of modern, the way kids are treated in school, would you have been considered like this kid's troubling, or maybe would you have been considered an ADD kid, or like any?
Yeah, I would say likely. Now when you look at it, I didn't get in trouble. I just was always doing something that people didn't really get. Right? Like I just would ask all the questions and drive all the adults crazy.
Yeah.
And I would get bored very easily. And in the academics, I was good at, I knew all the questions and the answers, but I just didn't care enough to put enough effort into it because it was just boring.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So you were bored with it. You were like,
I was just really bored.
Kinda
I'm
looking for the
like,
next
why
thing.
are we doing this?
Yeah.
And I was always trying to fix things, like tell adults how to do things better. And they did not like that.
Right.
You know, and so I got a lot of trouble that way.
Especially in
that
Boston.
way, you know,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
mom
Yeah.
got another call, you
Yeah.
know, from,
Right.
you know, what's going on?
Right.
Well, your son seems to think that he knows my job better than I do.
Yeah.
And it's very disrespectful. And I'd be like, Mom, it's not disrespectful. It's just, he's wrong
right.
or she's wrong. And
You're like, Ma, come on.
yeah,
Like,
Ma.
Ma.
She hated that, by the way. Because she came from one side of the tracks, the other, and
right.
she's like, it's mother
Right, okay.
or mom if you're lucky.
Or mom, right. I want to hear that second
Never
M.
Ma.
Right.
Yeah.
Right on. Where did you come in the order of all your brothers and sisters?
Right in the middle.
Oh.
So I was like, you know, Bobby Brady,
Okay.
right? You
Yep.
had Greg, and then you had little guy, and then, you know.
Yep.
Yeah. So
Yep.
I was right in the middle. The one that everybody forgot.
Yeah, because you get stuck in the middle. Did you find yourself middles are usually a lot of times they're fixers, right? Because they're kind of mending the uppers and the
I
lowers.
was stuck in the middle, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also when I wasn't doing that, they just forget about you. So I had a lot of freedom in a lot of ways,
Yeah.
you know, because I would just disappear.
Right.
I remember I ran away once.
Okay.
Yeah, we were having a huge party, and I don't know if I was just frustrated or what. And
How old?
Probably around 7 or 8.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was a little guy.
Yeah.
And I remember grabbing this I had a little suitcase.
Yeah.
That was like a hard, like little thing, and it looked like jeans on the outside.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember those.
Oh, yeah.
Jeans,
Yeah.
jean patches.
Yep.
And so I just remember clearly filling it full of underwear.
That's smart.
I needed underwear.
Right.
Right. And so I just packed the whole thing full of underwear.
That's good. You were going to be good.
Yeah. And it was pouring rain outside, slid my window open, and I climbed out, threw my suitcase out, climbed out, and then walked around the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And got soaking wet. And it got really cold. And I couldn't get back in because it was higher. And I had to ring the doorbell. And I'm there with my suitcase, and my mom, my mother answered. Right. And, you know, she's like, you know, and this is the city, right? So you're walking around the city, you know, even though it was safe back bay. But yeah, she was not happy about that. But I was just kind of one of those rebel kids that, you know, that was as much trouble as I really got into. Like, you know.
Okay. So no scraps with the law or anything kind of coming up?
No. I was just, I guess just, you know, I never really got that far.
Just curious.
I wasn't like building
just
bombs.
curious.
And stuff
Right,
like
right,
that.
right.
Because that's kind of where it could have gone. But
Sure.
I didn't go down there.
Yeah. Right on. Okay. So you mentioned the Maritime Marines or the Maritime Academy?
Yeah, Massachusetts Maritime Academy.
Okay. So tell me what that is. That a prep school or is that a college?
It's an actual 4-year college. It's paramilitary, and it's in Buzzards Bay, Massachusetts.
Okay.
And I actually went there because we would summer every year on the Cape.
Beautiful.
Yeah, and I still to this day I have a lot of relatives there. We have a home there, and I grew up basically every summer in Sandwich, Massachusetts.
Okay.
Which is it's a town.
Yep.
That was founded in 1632.
Okay.
I know that because it's the plaque on the church that we used to go to, which is a steeple church, typical New England kind of stuff.
Beautiful.
Yeah, and it's a bed and breakfast now.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, which I stay at once in a while.
Yeah.
But it's right on the ocean, and I just remember every summer I would, from the time I can remember, just exploring the beaches and disappearing and coming home when the lights go on, you know, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that was wonderful. So for me, the ocean has I'm very connected to it.
Yeah.
And so going to Mass Maritime, because there's a lot of military in my family.
Okay.
A lot. My father was in Korea in the Army.
Yeah.
I have aunts, all 3 of my uncles on my mother's side, Air Force, and Army.
Yeah.
So it's just my grandfather was in World War
influence.
II.
Okay.
You know, so it's just everywhere. So I thought that would be great, and I get to go on ships and sail and go in the ocean. That was great.
Yeah. So Martha's Vineyard. So my times I've been on Martha's Vineyard, I worked for a company that was headquartered in Boston back in the .com era, so right in the 2000 spring of 2000. So the bubble had burst, we just didn't know it quite yet, and we did a boot camp on Martha's Vineyard, right? So we had week in Boston, learning about the stuff, and then team building boot camp kind of thing. It wasn't boot camp; it was just team building at a massive home that was like a bed and breakfast style thing that we took over. And I just remember being awestruck by the age and the beauty of Martha's Vineyard, right?
Yeah.
And the innkeeper was talking about, and I'll get some of the facts wrong here, but basically, oh yeah, that property over there, that's part of the Ingersoll Rand family. And I'm like, you mean the guys that make the giant generators and stuff like that? Yeah, but that's like the Ingersolls and the Rands got together and made Ingersoll Rand, and then now it's this massive, U.S. industrial company, but it started here, like as a family-owned business type of thing, and you're like, man,
as they did back then.
Yeah, exactly. And so it was awesome to see. It was a beautiful. I did some running. I like to run distance, as we talked about earlier, and I did some running around Martha's Vineyard while I was there, and
wow, that was
just phenomenally beautiful.
awesome.
It was incredible. Yeah, I love it. But
I love the vineyard. I go all the time.
Yeah. Okay, so in the academy then is the objective you go through 4 years to get a degree, and then do you then owe them some time? Is there like a service component?
Yeah, there's nothing owed, but a lot. Well, at least that's when I was going there. It's changed, I suspect, quite a bit since then. When I was there were only 2 majors.
Okay.
You went in to get your engineering degree.
Yeah.
So a marine engineering degree.
Yeah.
And then they shifted to you could get marine and mechanical. Or you would get a naval. You become like a captain, so you get a license in marine, whatever operations.
Right.
I clearly was on the engineering side, so
Okay.
Hence my lack of knowledge on the other side. But so yeah, I went through the engineering track, a marine engineering track,
Yep.
and you would go in and uniforms, boot camp, the whole you're right on the Cape Cod Canal in a place called Buzzards Bay, Massachusetts.
Right.
And it's right on the Cape Cod Canal. And they have a ship. You have a big training ship, which is, at the time, it was called the Patriot State. It was like 680 feet long.
Oh, wow.
And we go out on cruises when most people taking,
Spring
winter
break or
breaks
something.
and things like that.
Yeah.
We would go for 2 months into the Atlantic or the Pacific. We'd sail
Northern
around.
Atlantic.
And
right.
yes. And we'd be out to sea for weeks at a time, and we'd have training classes
Wow.
and learning our trade and learning how to run ships and big boilers and studying all the physics and calculus and thermodynamics and all those types of things. So
Incredible.
for me, it was heaven.
Man.
Yeah.
So issues with seasickness?
Never
Never
really been sick.
You saw it though on the boat though a lot. You saw it on the ships, the kids, the other ones?
A lot, yeah. More than not.
Yeah.
Yeah, most people for some reason they get their sea legs.
Okay.
And then they move on.
Okay. So once you get it, once you kind of break through, you're good?
Yeah, for me it was the opposite, which is very strange. So after I got out, I worked for the government for quite a while. I did spend quite a bit of time out there, but I'd go out for quite a while. I would get sick coming in.
On the land?
On land, yeah. It's a very strange phenomenon. But we'd come out, and because I was just more comfortable out there. And I remember going through storms in the North Atlantic and
incredible storms
in February with 60-foot swells in a military vessel.
Yes.
We'll just leave it at that.
Yeah.
And just crazy. And you'd see a lot of people getting sick.
Water coming over the bow, just blowing over it.
Yeah, green water over the and everything would freeze up. And you'd have to go out there. Everybody would have to go out there. Even civilian folks would have to go out there and chip ice off the deck and off the railings, because if the ice is very heavy, it would, what they call turtle the ship. It would flip the ship over. Because you become top heavy.
Yeah, and then you turtle and go to the bottom.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
So I never had a problem with that. I mean, it was always for me an adventure. I always felt kept journals, and it was an adventure for me. It was when we came back in that I remember, we'd go walking down the aisle to buy groceries because there's nothing in the refrigerator for you left, and I'd lose my lunch in the aisle.
It's incredible.
Yeah,
it's like you had a gyro.
Clean up on aisle 5.
It's like your gyro is good at over water, but your gyro hits land, it goes wonky.
I had to get my land legs.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it's strange.
It is. I've seen so many videos of these massive, ocean-going vessels pulling, whatever, containers on it. These dramatic, in the North Atlantic with swells and the water, and it just looks like, to me, it's the demonstration of the power of nature, right?
I love it.
And it's incredible.
And
right?
and what you're looking at is actually what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's incredible.
And did you see some people freak out probably on those boats?
We've had a lot of people, and they fill out waivers and government, with the whole, because I work for the government in that space, and the whole thing, and we've had airlifts and
oh wow, yeah, because they get me out of here.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's wild.
Yeah.
Do you ever go overboard? Do you ever get in the water?
On purpose.
On purpose.
Yeah, they do training. Like
Yep.
at the academy, we did training, and then after we did a lot of training where we
Yep.
jump in Gumby, what they call Gumby suits.
Yeah.
So in the winter, in summertime,
Different than a poopy suit.
different than a poopy suit.
Right.
Yes, exactly. Yes. Yeah. So
Right.
so they're come in different colors. Ours, the ones I typically worked on were. In the civilian world, were orange, and they look like a Gumby suit because you've got
Yeah.
like lobster hands.
Okay.
And all you zip up, you get a little snorkel. All you can see is your little face.
Yeah.
But they're considered
Dry suit.
Yeah. Well, as
Kinda.
close as they're going to get. But you basically jump in and you immerse yourself, and you got to you float around,
Got to hang out.
and you just learn to survive.
Don't freak out.
Don't freak out. But when
Yeah.
you're in the warm water, you can just go in your skivvies and your
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, you've been in still water too, right? Yeah, it's just dead calm, just
yeah,
out there, just
I'll tell
cruising.
you, I've got some memories. I'll tell you that you're 1,000 miles away from anything that you consider solid ground,
Yeah,
and it's like glass, and
amazing.
the sun's shining, and you can see 200 feet down, and it's quiet, and it's the most
Amazing.
beautiful, surreal. It's like being on a different planet. Yeah,
Incredible.
yeah,
Love that. Do you sail as well? You like it?
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you do,
I used to sail on a 42-foot Moody, and we used to do the French, and then also on a friendship sloop. We used to do the friendship sloop regatta from Newport to Marble.
oh
That was
man,
a lot of fun.
how awesome is that?
Yeah, I was just a young guy then, and that was the greatest thing ever. Because I got to drink beer. Yeah. I heard that. Yeah, don't tell Dr. Osborne.
No, no.
Yeah,
We talked a little bit about beer. He's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
not as much of a fan.
Yeah, no. But the way it would start is, you'd have each crew
Yeah.
and at the end of the tent, and then on the land, and you'd have to suck down as fast as you can a big pint of beer,
Yeah.
and then run down to your mooring,
Yeah.
and then set sail. Pull your sails up, and that's how you started the race by sucking down a beer, and it was great. And you ended the race by running up and drinking
another beer
pint and ringing the bell, and whoever did that first won.
That's the
regatta.
end of the race. Huh?
That was great. Yeah,
That's awesome.
And then you just kept drinking. It was like-
Right. That's
it was
awesome.
awesome.
Love it. Love
Yeah.
it. All right. So you finish the academy, and then you end up going to Cornell for your MBA. Is there something that happens in between, or
A lot, yeah, a lot. I didn't go till after, actually, in my 8th or 9th year of working for Uncle Sam.
okay? So you went to the DoD, right?
I did.
Can you talk
yeah.
about that, or is that?
I stepped in. Actually, started in my my junior year.
Okay.
While I was at the academy, I was recruited.
Okay. To what part of the DoD can you talk about your time
Just
there? or-
Department of Defense. You
Okay.
know, you could say IC community. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
CIA community.
IC.
IC,
So, yeah,
which
so,
is
intelligence community.
Intelligence. Oh, okay, right on. I can
worked
see it. A
in
little cagey
research
there, a
and-
little
Research
doing things,
development, that's all I'll say.
Yeah.
I wasn't an analyst or anything like that. I was in the field
I
doing
love
my
it.
thing, working,
Okay. In the field. Oh,
doing my
nice.
part,
Not
yeah.
not in the office. So
not in the office.
that's so funny. I have a good buddy that he is a redheaded guy, pale skin, just a classic redhead, right?
Yeah.
And he was in the CIA. And he worked in Colombia, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, how in the world did you work for the CIA in Colombia? He goes, bro, I had a backpack and I was a college kid on break. He goes,
That's how it works.
I was just fine. And I was like, what? He goes, I was sunburned all the time.
Yeah.
But it was just fine.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my gosh. And he goes, that's pretty much all I can say. And I'm like, Roger that. Okay.
Yes, they like us young and adventurous and fearless, and I think that, and smart and willing to whatever. But
Intelligent. Yeah. I have another good buddy that was a Navy diver, one of the scuba tank looking guys with the hose coming out of the head and the big fishbowl helmet and all that stuff.
Yeah, hard hat diving.
yes.
Mixed gas diving.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And
I did a bit of that.
Okay. Yeah. And I was like, man, that's really cool. You went pretty deep, huh? He's like, yeah, I went pretty deep. And I was like, how deep did you go? And he goes, well, the book says 500 feet. And I'm like, what do you mean the book? He's like, well, the safety of the suit and what it's classified as, it can go 500 feet. I'm like, oh, did you go further? He's like, well, we went 500 feet. That's all I can tell you.
Yeah.
Like,
Here's your answer.
No, there's your answer. I'm like, okay, we'll go 500 feet then. Yeah, that's it. And he's like, that's all I can tell
pretty
you.
Deep. That's a lot of decompression.
Yeah.
I mean, and depending on how fast you have to mobilize out,
Yeah.
You end up, you're coming up to your decompression stages,
Just
and then you're getting on deck.
Hover.
Yeah, but you don't have time to take the real time you need to decompress all the way up.
Yeah.
So you do is the minimum you need to. It's all calculated.
Yeah.
And your dive master who's on deck handle all of that through your comms.
Yeah.
And they'll take you up as fast as they can, and then you've got minutes before you need to get into the decompression chamber and blow you back down. The bell, they call it the dive bell, and they would just blow you back down in order to get you back to the depth.
Yeah.
So keep that oxygen and everything in your bloodstream, all the gases in your bloodstream condensed under pressure, and then slowly let that expand. So, I've been in a decompression valve on the deck of a ship for, 11 hours.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And do you feel like garbage when you're in there?
No, not necessarily. You feel
like you're
like
sitting there?
when you're under that kind of pressure and you're breathing the gases, the mixed gas, you feel a little drunk, actually. You feel like you've had quite a few martinis.
Okay.
So you've got to keep your head again, But when you're actually down there and you're doing work, and you're actually, you've got to really keep your head on.
Sure.
And you get used to it. But when you come back up, you get magazines. They give you food.
I was going to say, they give you a book in there?
Yeah,
some
you
food?
get magazines and reading materials. This is before they had cell phones, so I didn't have cell phones and things like that. But yeah, magazines, books. I'm an incessant reader.
Yeah.
And then they bring you food. It's because you have inner chambers inside the bell. So you have one. So you blow you here, and then they'd blow down this one. They'd open this door, and you go into it, and then they close this one so they could pass food back and forth.
Okay.
Sometimes you'd have 2 or 3 guys at a time.
Yeah.
And then being blown down into different sides, and then you come out. They'd pass you through, and interesting stuff.
Is there a restroom in there somewhere?
There is a way to use the bathroom. Yes, it's not exactly
pleasant.
a restroom.
It's not pleasant.
We didn't have a giant, it wasn't an apartment. It was like literally like, it looks like, this big,
like a big
LP
sauna.
gas tanks.
Yeah.
With windows so they can look inside.
So you got like
Thumbs
a small
up,
exit chamber you just kind of snuggle up to.
It's like a little mini submarine on the deck. Yeah.
Right on.
Yeah.
Man, interesting. Okay. All right. So DOD, you run your stint there.
Yeah.
8 years.
Yeah.
Traveling the world. 10 years.
Almost 10, yeah.
Seeing the world, doing the field thing.
Yeah.
Right
And then I went out to Mexico for doing my cooling off period.
Okay.
They put me on kind of like, this is a light thing for you to do.
Light duty, Mexico.
Yeah, it's kind of, you can't get in trouble out there, JD.
Right.
So I went out there, and that's where I met my wife.
Okay. So the movie, I'm drawing a blank, with John Krasinski, where he's Jack, who is he's the CIA analyst.
Reacher?
Not Jack Reacher. The other one where Harrison Ford was famously him in October.
Oh, yeah. I know who you're talking about. I'm
drawing a blank on it. But so he was basically an analyst, but he wasn't doing analyst work. He was like, it was kind of jacked up because he was truly in his role in the movie was to be an analyst, but he was doing all his field work, which is not the way it goes.
Ryan.
Jack Ryan. Yeah. And so it's not the way it goes, right? The analysts stay behind. They're in the cubicle, right? And the field guys are in the field, right? So there's different.
Yeah, that's funny.
Right. Yeah, analysts stay
that would be
behind
a
the
very
desk.
rare situation.
Right, it just doesn't happen. Right?
The psych tests and all that stuff is way up front.
Completely different.
Yeah.
Right.
The guys in the field are the cowboys.
Of course. Yeah, right. They're the cool guys. I'm with you.
Yeah,
I'm down.
yeah.
Okay. All right. So DOD time starts to wrap, and then you go to Cornell, or what's happening?
Yeah. So right around there, and then I go to Cornell, and I get my master's in program development. And
so did you decide like my time is kind of up and doing this cool guy stuff, and I'm now going to focus on business, or where's kind of the headspace?
As well. So there was a pivot point. I've had a lot of them in my life. I'm sure you have, and I'm sure your listeners have.
Yeah.
Right. When you're
that's what the show's about,
authenticity,
baby.
right?
Yes.
You make those decisions, right? Because you want to get back to whatever you think your authentic self is in the moment, right?
Yeah.
I think there's stages when our authenticity is different, right? It's still
for sure.
So I decided that you either continue doing what you're doing, and with that comes risk, but reward depending on if you're happy with what you've done and what you could do, or you decide. In my case, do you want to have a family?
Yep.
And I wanted to have a family.
Okay.
It's really hard to do that and that.
Yeah.
Nearly impossible.
Only on the road.
Only road. Yeah. So I said, I want to do something different. And I knew I didn't want to do it with Uncle Sam.
Yeah.
Like I knew I wanted to have a family, but not a family with Uncle Sam. So I figured out I needed to do something different. And so that's why I wanted to go back to school and see what my options were.
Yep.
And program development was very different from engineering and very different from other things that I had either taught myself or been taught. And it felt like a little bit broader it didn't peg me into a hole, like an accountant or be a lawyer or be a doctor or something like that.
Yeah. Okay. So did you go full time to
Yeah.
Cornell? So you're 2 years in that program.
Yeah.
And you come out.
I did a lot of it online, and then I'd do like a weekend every month. I'd go out there at the campus up in Ithaca, which is a fantastic place, by the way.
Yeah.
Go Big Red.
Right on.
But,
right on. So I grew up as a kid in Buffalo, so not that, just a little bit upstate from you.
Yeah, exactly. And so I met a lot of great people, and professors were fantastic. And that was right when all of that was, evolving. That whole remote schooling online.
I was going to say,
I did some of that at Wharton too when I went to Wharton for finance.
Yeah.
I went to Wharton West, which was in California.
Oh, I didn't
San
know there was a
Francisco.
Wharton West.
Most people don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't until I inquired, and
What
I'm like,
part of California?
right in San Francisco. Wow. Yeah, and the old coffee
Before it was rotten. Before it
turned
before it
into
fell
a
apart.
hellhole.
Right. Yeah.
It
It used to be cool. You could walk around that place.
Yeah, yeah, and I've got a whole part of my life where I was in San Francisco.
Oh man, what a beautiful
significant
city.
part. Both my children were born in California.
Oh really?
Yeah, in San Francisco.
Incredible city, man.
Yeah,
It's
at the time
at
it
the
was
time.
just it was wonderful for me. Right, I'm not going to jump ahead on you right now, but we'll get there.
Yeah,
yeah, but so that's when I was there, and then I took my wife.
Okay.
And or she took me.
Yeah.
She was actually we met because she was working for the government as well.
Okay.
The Mexican government. My wife is Mexican.
Okay.
Her name is Yvette. Yeah. She's one of 9 children. Yes.
Yeah.
Big family. She has a twin sister.
Roman Catholic.
Yeah, very Roman Catholic. Yes, very Roman Catholic, like, as most Mexicans are.
All right.
And phenomenal family. I mean, I can't believe they adopted me as much as.
It's awesome.
And it's very eclectic family as well. So they have a lot of different things. But she was working for at the time, it was like the Mexican version of the secret police, like the FBI.
Oh, wow.
And she's a computer engineer. So she was writing
super
programs
smart
for the, smart girl.
Big
so
brain.
she was doing a bunch of things. And we met at a co-event.
Okay.
Like
U.S. government, Mexican government.
Kind of, yeah. And so it was kind of my cooling off, kind of whatever. And we met
there. Oh, right,
there.
because you were in Mexico.
Yes, and we started courting.
Yeah.
And that's when all of that came together. And then I said, hey, going back to school, going to do some things. I'm going back, whatever. Come with me.
Nice.
And she said, not until we get married.
Okay.
So I went back alone.
Okay.
For a while. And my phone bill was crazy.
Yes.
Because we didn't have we had beepers back then,
man.
right? At that point, we had beepers.
Yeah.
And so eventually I decided, I said, I'm coming back. Will you marry me?
Love that.
And I went back and got married there.
Okay.
With her.
Where in Mexico?
Just outside of Mexico City.
Okay.
And it's called, it's right next to Cuernavaca, but it's the state of Morelos. Yep. And it's called Cuautla, which is a very small, it used to be a beautiful town, not so much anymore.
Okay.
But it was beautiful. And we got married
in the mountains? Is it like a mountain?
It is in the high plains.
Yeah.
So, Mexico City is at 9,000, 10,000 feet. At its highest point, it's almost 11. And then you drive down and you get to about 5,000 feet above sea level.
Beautiful.
And you get the high plains, and it's called the land of eternal spring, and I love it.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Incredible.
So we spend a lot of time there now.
Oh, you do now? You still? Oh, great.
Yeah, we have a place down there.
She's got a lot of family there.
And I like to play golf, so we can play golf.
Oh.
You should come.
Oh, yeah. Fabulous.
Yeah.
Love to.
So we got married there in this 350-year-old church, surrounded by, I don't know how many hundreds of, and only like 3 of my family members showed up.
Oh, right.
My mom, my dad, and my brother.
I was going to say, the Bostons, it's tough to get the folks out of Boston,
right? It is
right?
tough to get them out of Boston, right? Especially the old New Englanders. Right? They're just like, I don't know, is it safe? You know what I mean?
I ain't coming.
Yeah, exactly. Do they have like cars in Mexico? I was like, no, got crazy questions. Like, it's like, yeah, they do. Yeah, exactly. Not everybody's riding a donkey.
Yeah.
This was like in the early 90s. So
I think,
late 90s.
a lot of my family, I thought when we moved to Texas in 1980, that there was some question of, is there a lot of horseback riding going on to school? Is there, like, are the people moving around on horses? It's like, I don't know. We'll see when we get there.
What are the traffic jams when they're moving cattle across the highway?
Across the highway, right? Yeah, we didn't find as much of that. So
right?
Strange,
yeah. When you
the TV's a bad teacher, I'll tell you.
It is. Yeah, it is. As we've seen in the last decade.
Yeah.
how it's taken over people's minds.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
100%. All right. So you go back to San Francisco. You take your bride with you. Go back to San Francisco.
So while we went to Boston first.
Okay.
I took her there, and that lasted about 8 months, and then I decided to go up to New Hampshire. Yeah. We bought a place by Dartmouth College, and she went to Dartmouth College for a little while.
Oh, beautiful.
And I was working at the time. I was recruited to work for a biotech company.
Okay.
That's why we went up there, called Stryker Biotech.
Stryker, same as Stryker that makes the artificial limbs, things like that.
Yeah, and they all started in World War II when they just made they call it Stryker because they had stretchers, and they would strike open the stretcher when they were just wooden, like whatever, and then they just built from there. It's been around for a long time.
Wow.
And now they still make hospital beds and things. But yeah, I was recruited by their executive vice president, Jamie Kemmler at the time, to come up through friends of mine who we had connections in the government, whatever.
Yeah.
And I had done some consulting at AstraZeneca.
Okay.
In Westboro, Massachusetts.
Yep.
At the infamous glass pyramid there.
Uh-huh.
And I was working on rhinocort and other types of budesonides and the robotic systems and the tech side of things and project management, program management, right?
Okay,
Which I was using that thing. And then I went to work for Stryker Biotech. And they had just acquired a company called Creative Biomolecules, which was the genesis of Stryker Biotech. And they brought me out to help develop that program using an osteogenic protein, a bone morphogenic protein, which was the replacement for basically doing autografts using bone, like in the upper crustaceal region of the hip, very invasive for a non-unionized long bone. So if you had a fracture in your on your arm or in your leg, if it wasn't healing properly, a lot of times they'll take a piece of hip bone and they'll put there and they'll fixate it with screws and things like that. Well, this was just an osteogenic protein. So they would take CHO cells, Chinese hamster ovarian cells. They would ferment them in bioreactors using specific types of processes that I helped develop. And then we would harvest the osteogenic proteins. Basically, we'd truncate the life cycle of the protein in order for it to, because as a defensive mechanism, the proteins, the cells, would give off a certain protein. And that protein was what would help grow bone. And so we would mix that with other types of catalysts and then we would lyophilize that, which means freeze dry it, just like coffee. Yeah. And then instead of having to do all of that invasive surgery, the physicians would just reconstitute that with something called water for injection, sterilized water. And they would just open up the location where that non-fixation, the broken bone would be that wasn't healing. They would take like a putty and it would stick it in that little location using a device, like a little cage. They'd fill up the putty and they'd sew it up. And we found through clinical trials, which we got approved by the FDA through BLA licensing, that 90% of the time you'd have a complete union. So it was a pretty big deal.
So it's basically it would become like bone. It would like
literally
bone.
be your bone.
Yeah.
It would just and it wouldn't bone spur. It wouldn't grow bone where it shouldn't be. It was just remarkable stuff. And so I helped work on the engineering development side with Jamie and his team there in West Lebanon, New Hampshire, just outside of Hanover, which was convenient because Yvette, my wife, was going to Dartmouth and I was going there. And so we were single, we had no kids, that kind of thing. What I meant by single, we were married, but so we had this little lake house and it was the perfect thing. And then a year and a half, 2 years goes by and my wife tells me, we got our licensing, things were going great. I was getting a little bored, but my wife's like, yeah, I'm from Mexico. I spent a winter and a half here.
I'm freezing.
This is not happening. She's like, you have a choice.
Up.
Yeah, time's up.
Yeah.
So that's what took us to San Francisco.
Okay. So not especially tropical climate, but at least not New Hampshire, no more snow, no more shoveling.
It was not New Hampshire, Maine, Vermont.
Yeah, those are some long winters.
The Cape in the wintertime.
Okay.
It was beautiful summers. And I'll tell you, it was, when we landed in San Francisco, it was springtime of 2020. No, I'm sorry, 2000. 2000, yes. And 2020. No, 2000. And it's before 9/11.
Yeah.
The city is just blooming.
Yes.
And the streets are clean, and real estate is starting to bloom, and the biotech market is exploding. The tech sector is growing. The investment, the venture capital, angel, it's just this excitement in the world, that's happening.
It's incredible.
And we landed there, and the first thing we did was go down to the Embarcadero, and beautiful sunny day, warm, rare for San Francisco, and we bumped into Robin Williams.
No way.
Yes. And
what was he doing?
He was because he lived not too far from there, in Marin County. But they had the San Francisco version of the Tour de France.
Yeah,
kind of
he's
thing.
A major cyclist.
Nice cyclist there, yeah. Well, they were having this big thing, and they had a commentator's booth. And I met some gentleman there who invited us to go sit in the commentator's booth.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is great, best seats in the house.
Yeah.
Well, he comes unannounced, uninvited, walks right up, bright orange jumpsuit.
Take a picture.
And he grabs the mic and he starts like commenting like crazy, like he's doing his crazy
doing his
shtick,
Robin Williams
doing
thing.
his shtick. And everybody is just freaking out. And he's like bumping into me while we're doing this. Yeah. And I'm like, how you doing, Robin? He's like, how are you? And we just struck up a conversation. And Yvette was just, was like, I'm like, yeah, She's like, okay, got it.
Yeah.
And then he just disappeared in the crowd. No bodyguards, nothing, and left. And we just were stuck there going, I love this place.
Yeah.
Like, we're never leaving
here.
You're
like, this is
we
incredible.
We are not leaving here.
Yeah.
And then 17 years later, we left.
17 years you were
17
there.
years.
Yeah. So I remember the first time I went to San Francisco with my parents and my, who is my wife now, and she's sitting outside this room.
Yeah, I met her.
Yeah,
she's beautiful.
My lovely wife and I have been married, be 32 years in May. Mm-hmm. And at the time, though, we were dating. And so we went on, I invited her, she was still living in New York, invited her to Texas, and then we were going on this trip to San Francisco. So we fly out to San Francisco, and this was 1988. Fabulous, unbelievable. Like, this is the city of, like, it was incredible. I mean, beauty, you have the Golden Gate Bridge, you got the water. We went to wine country. Everything. We drove down PCH Highway 1. We went all the way down. We went pretty far south. I can't remember if we got all the way to LA, but certainly through like Carmel. We checked out.
Oh my God, Carmel! Clint Eastwood was
we went to the Boar's Head Lodge, had a beer, had an Anchor Steam beer while we were there.
Yeah, know it well.
Oh my gosh,
spot.
Fabulous. And we were like, I'm thinking, I remember saying like,
Monterey, Cannery Row.
Oh my gosh, my favorite city. Like, how could you not want to live here? This is incredible, right?
Yes.
And we had some family, two of her brothers were living in LA at the time. And I'm like, this city is incredible. Like, this is a place to go.
To me, it was the greatest city
in the world. Land of opportunity,
Yeah.
place to go out and make your millions, make your way.
Yeah. Who needs New York?
All right. It was incredible.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely been destroyed. I said this to, we got a lot of family or friends that are from California. I'm like, how do you take a state with so abundant natural resources, beauty, and absolutely destroy it?
Yeah.
And
you put the wrong people in charge.
Yeah.
For too long.
Bad decision after bad decision.
Yeah. Or just don't care.
Yeah.
Like, they just don't care.
Right.
Not even a bad decision. It's just don't care enough to make a decision.
Right.
That makes any sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's terrible. It's tragic. Yeah.
It is. And so when we left, we left to come to Texas is what it was. And when we left, we were like, I think it's time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's time. I think we rode that.
Yeah.
We rode that pony a long time.
Yeah.
And it was so sad because both my children were born there.
Yeah.
My son, who's 22, my daughter, who's now will be 19 this month. They still think fondly of all the friends and the schools and trips we did along the coast and going down to Santa Cruz to the boardwalk and hanging out and stepping on banana slugs and just going up wine drink. But they've never seen it like now, or like what it is now.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. Oh, my sister-in-law is generational Californians, and she now lives in Texas, and they're retired. She and her, my wife's brother's married to our sister-in-law, Erin. And she's like, yeah, I never would have imagined leaving to California. Never would have imagined it. But now I can't even imagine ever staying. Like, it's been destroyed. Now, it's great to go back and visit and see family and vacation, but it's become hard to say it's become unlivable, but it's almost become very difficult to live there.
Yeah.
Right? Expense and just
Well, look at the fires that just happened.
Fires.
I mean, that was completely avoidable.
Right.
They had water.
Yeah.
Right? If they give the people the tools, right? All of this, it was just a series. It wasn't one thing.
Yeah.
It was a series of ongoing, just not caring or making poor decisions with the wrong people in the wrong places at the wrong time, doing the wrong things.
Yeah. Yeah. And continues. And it's a shame. But, okay. So clearly from what the things you're describing, when your background, JD, you're big brained, right? So you're doing the things you describe with the bone and the thing, and you're running these big programs that are doing miraculous things medically. So you've made this bridge from Department of Defense doing government stuff to medicine, to biotech and medicine and technology. And then now where is that path kind of taking you? So you're in San Francisco, and then where does that kind of bridge you from there?
Yeah, so I was there, and I was working for, I helped develop inhalable insulin with, that's what brought me out to San Francisco. I was offered an opportunity after I finished, kind of felt like I had run the course. Yeah. I'm not a big fan of staying late. You know what I mean? I did my thing.
Leave at 11.
Right. You know what I mean? Drop the mic, walk out. You know what I mean? Like,
don't stay past
stuff happens sometimes, right? Because you get the wrong people in.
Yeah.
Right. All of a sudden it becomes a bigger thing.
Changes.
And everybody starts sharp elbowing you. And I'm like, I'm not interested in that. Yeah. So, give me the freedom to make it work.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I was recruited by a company called Inhale Therapeutics. It's called Nectar Therapeutics now. And in Inhale Therapeutics, we developed the world's first inhalable insulin, and we partnered with Pfizer and Eli Lilly at the time, and we got that approved, and was to help prevent all the injections. For me, it was, I was tired of seeing young children have to get poked and prodded all the time because trying to measure their insulin. Now they have pumps and things like that, but at that time they didn't. Yeah. So imagine being able to just inhale it, right?
It's incredible.
Yeah, it was basically submicron sized. I developed the mechanical systems along with a bunch of other people. It wasn't just me.
Sure.
I was just part of the team and lucky to be so. And I spent almost, I'd say, 2.5 to 3 years living in the lab.
In the lab.
And
large all these submicron particles floating around and
I get some stories for you. Wow, I'll tell you, never get. Anyways, so
wearing a suit and the whole thing.
Well, and then because you take a liquid and then you superheat it, but you got to do it in a way so that it doesn't sublimate and damage the insulin itself.
Yep.
And to get it into a submicron size particle, and temperature and the jets that we use, and it's like we created these 3-story air dryers effectively with superheated. Supersonic, whatever.
Crazy.
And then we create the particle size, and then we collect it down below, and then we capsulize it, and then put it into a device, and then you pump this device, and then you'd press the button, and you have it in your mouth, and you'd inhale at the same time, and you'd get, and we proved that we could get this submicron size particle of active insulin. Right, and we could control the dosage down into the lower alveoli, what we call the tennis court of the lungs. And the reason why they call it a tennis court is because if you took an average adult's lungs and unfolded them, they'd be about the size of a tennis court.
No way.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible.
Wow,
I've seen it. It's pretty crazy.
No.
Yeah, it's crazy. But yeah, so
the whole court or just up to the net?
Half. The whole court.
The whole court.
The whole court.
It's incredible.
Yeah, it's amazing.
That's all lung tissue.
You wouldn't think of it. It would be very thin, but yes, because it unfolding. But yes, and we get in order to get systemic delivery through the bloodstream, and then we would pegulate the drug so that you have time release and a bunch of other things. And that was incredible time for me. It was a lot of fun. I worked with some amazing people like Simon Forder and great scientists and engineers and it takes a whole family because you got to have marketing and device. So it was great. So I did that. That's what brought me out there.
I have some friends with type 2 or type 1 diabetes with this before. Type 1?
This is type 1.
Type 1.
Yeah,
I have some friends type 1. I've never heard that there was an inhalable insulin.
Well, they pulled it off the market.
Interesting.
Yeah. After about a year and a half after I left, I went to a company called Chiron, and I became head of their global biopharmaceutical division for a few years. Yeah. I was too young, quite frankly, to be doing that, but I did it anyways. Yeah. After I left, they had pulled it off the market because what was happening is, and it's a shame, it's a travesty, quite frankly, where doctors were prescribing it to patients that shouldn't be taking it, smokers. And so what happens is the smokers, because of their physiology after years of smoking. The inhalation of the would cause a 1 to 2% degradation in performance of their lung capacity. And all of a sudden they started complaining, and then they pulled it off the market.
I see.
And it was really a failure
Yep.
of the pharmaceutical company who had on the market, which is Pfizer.
Yep.
And Pfizer's a great company, but they failed. And the reason why they failed is because Pfizer, in that time, exploded and became a multi-billion-dollar company off of one drug, Viagra. And their entire sales team and how they sold and everything were younger and younger people who really weren't qualified.
Yep.
And they took the same sales team that was selling Viagra, which was basically the easiest drug on the planet to sell.
Yes.
Right? Doctors were writing prescriptions like crazy.
Left and
they
right.
tried to sell a sophisticated, specific drug product for a specific type of patient.
Complex.
The same way.
Yep.
And it just didn't work. And that's why it failed. And that's my opinion.
Yep.
That's only my opinion. I've never read that anywhere.
Right.
But just having been so close to it, as I do a postmortem.
Yeah. Sure. Makes sense. And Viagra too, I mean, not to go down this rabbit hole, but it was developed as like a heart medicine, right?
That's right. To increase blood flow.
Right.
Yeah.
And then they found out,
does.
look at this side effect.
It increases blood flow.
Yeah, exactly. Wow, look at this. And then all of a sudden the doctors are like, you got to bring me more shipments. My patients are.
Yes.
And doctors are putting in new houses and pools off of the Viagra sales. Yeah, crazy.
Yes. A lot of people made a lot of money.
A lot of money.
Yes,
Viagra.
they did.
Right on.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So let's talk a bit about, so you're doing the biotech and what happens after the insulin
So
run?
So I went to Chiron for a while, and that was really great. And I was under Howard Pian, who was the CEO at the time.
Yeah.
And then there was an acquisition by another company of Chiron. I was part of that transition team, and they offered me a job in Europe because there was a European company that did the acquisition. And I chose not to go to Europe. I was so in love with San Francisco. My wife was pregnant with our second child at the time.
Yep.
That was our home.
Yep.
And so I chose to take another role. I ended up at Genentech.
Okay.
And initially working for a company called Hyde. And before you know it, I was part of a trade. So I was up in Vacaville, California. They have their largest plant, and they were doing Herceptin for breast cancer treatments, things like that. So I went up there and I helped commercialize their CCP1 facility, which is just a fancy name or an acronym for large 30,000 liter multi-chain reactors to create Herceptin drug, which is a great product. It still is, as I understand it, and for that particular type of cancer. And so I was reporting to a whole bunch of people. I had a lot of bosses, and one of which was the chairman. And so get phone calls every once in a while. Hey, JD, da da da. We had some friends. He knew some friends of my dad's back in whatever. So we had that kind of relationship. Yeah. And I found out later over a conversation he had with the board of directors of Roche.
Yep.
That he had offered me up to Roche because Roche was found out later. Roche bought Genentech. Acquired that whole facility and all of that stuff.
Yep.
And I said, I don't want to go to Roche. And so he said, you really need to go to Roche. Yeah. So I said, so I started making some phone calls, and I got a call from the CEO and COO of Lonza.
Okay.
Based out of Switzerland.
Yep.
In Basel, Switzerland. The main manufacturing location is in Visp, about 2 hours south. Heading towards Italy, but all in Switzerland.
Beautiful.
And so they said, JD, how would you like to be head of global strategic growth investments for Lonza, which at the time was a $7 billion market cap company.
Wow.
And I said, what is that? What do they do?
Yeah. What do I do?
What do I do? Like,
I gotta get to buy stuff. Work? What do I do?
Yeah, like
is that acquisition?
Can you show me a job description? They're like, no, you pretty much we trust you. But you've got to and we'll let you live in San Francisco, but you've got to spend half your time in Switzerland.
In the south of Switzerland, near Italy.
Yes.
Yeah. You're like, wow,
And I'm like,
this is sounding rough.
Let's see about this, right? I'm not sure.
I don't know.
All right. Let me. So had a long conversation with the wife and the children, because I include them in everything, and decided to take the job.
Right
and
on.
so very quickly, I was knee deep in it, and I was planes, trains, and automobiles.
Right.
And I did that for quite a bit of time. And I, helped broker acquisitions of new technologies and the strategies. And what brought me to Texas, which is the next step, and probably you're going to ask me the question.
Yeah.
So what brought me to Texas was, as part of that role, I was part of the acquisition team for a biotech company located in Houston, Texas.
Okay.
And it was probably the least expensive acquisition I had been involved in. I did a $5 billion one, a couple $1 billion ones.
Yeah.
Capsugel we bought Capsugel for their time release stuff.
All right.
That was a big deal.
Wow.
Which fit in, and that was $5 billion.
Wow.
But this was like, 7 million, something like that.
Yeah.
So it was like,
Yeah.
really?
What,
Okay,
you need me to go?
yeah, really? Do I need to go? Send.
Can I stay here? And
Yeah. But so did it. It was what was so cool about it wasn't the deal.
Yeah.
It was the tech that they had developed, which was really good. And it was viral cell and gene therapy technology, transfection, which is really exploding, and it's like CRISPR technology and things which I could spend hours talking about that.
Yeah.
But so was involved with that, and then the COO, Mark Funk at the time, who became the CEO eventually, came to me and said, "Hey, JD, good job on that. That's great working with Stefan Stoffel, who was at the time my boss." He said, "We think because you speak the language so well." Yeah. Okay. I almost went back and said, "I don't park the car here." See if I can. But he said, "No, we think you need to go down there and be the defunct CEO of that business."
In Houston, Texas.
In Houston, Texas. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a little sweltery down there.
Yeah. It was actually not even in Houston, because their offices were like, strip mall offices at the time, because they were basically going. And so it was, no, we want you to go down there and build the world's largest viral cell and gene therapy facility on a 20-acre campus in Pearland, Texas.
Oh, right on.
Right? So elevation -10.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So flood zone, blah, da, da, da. And Hurricane Harvey hit, right, in 2016, 2017, whatever it was. 2017.
Yeah.
And that was a mess.
Clean the clock.
Yeah, but we survived that, believe it or not. So I went down there, and first I said no. And then they said, "Hey, well, if you do that, if you pull this off, you get that up and running, and if you could show, that you've got X amount of revenue, whatever, then, we'll have you come back and, give you a really high level job."
Oh.
And I was thinking, okay, it could be COO,
Right.
whatever. And I would be the first American
in
ever.
Switzerland to have that.
Yeah, it's in Lanza is now it's like 127, 28-year-old Swiss German company, right? So it's been around forever.
Intense,
Family owned initially.
Right.
Now it's public, whatever. But that's a big deal, right? And to me, that was exciting, because it was, again, another adventure.
New adventure.
Right? New
something
adventure.
new.
And I knew it would take a while for me to get bored.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, I'll do it. Convinced my wife to leave San Francisco, right?
Yep.
And the children, and they trusted me. Yep. And so off we went. We moved to Katy, Texas.
Oh, right.
For those of you who don't know, that's the energy corridor right outside of Houston.
Yep.
And I had a 30-minute commute to Pearland, and it started off. We had to shuffle the cows off the dirt that we purchased.
Some country out there back then, especially. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
And then we proceeded to build the world's largest viral cell and gene therapy facility, CMO manufacturing, and went live and brought in. And I was responsible for the whole business, and that includes like bringing in partners. Like we brought in. Bluebird Biosciences, which was out of Cambridge, which was so great because I could go visit their CEO there. But they had developed a drug with us. We were the ones manufacturing it for them. We were the first commercial manufacturing partners for them that cured adrenoleukodystrophy, which, if you don't know, and those of your viewers who don't know, it's a death sentence for young boys typically. Girls can get it, but typically young boys, they don't live typically past the age of, say, 13 or 14. And what adrenoleukodystrophy?
Autoimmune disease, or is it?
So what happens is their brain, there's a myelinization around the brain. It demyelinizes. So it's like that coating around the wires that if you plug in your wire, if that coating comes off, you get a short.
Yep. Delaminates.
It delaminates, right? So exactly. So the delamination or demyelinization of that layer around the nerves and all that stuff in the brain, and their brain short circuits. And what happens is they have no lung function, or they can't control their breathing or their heart's rhythm, all of that
System
stuff.
shut down.
Yeah, and it's just horrendous. And it didn't affect that many, but one's too many, right?
Yeah.
So it was like 17,000 young boys and girls a year. That's still a lot, right? So it was still a rare disease. And we got them approved, and we got on the market, and it was curative. And we have since, if anything came out of that whole thing, I was part of that team.
Wow.
That cured, they did all the heavy lifting, all the scientists. We just had the facility. We built the capability and the technology to be able to manufacture it in large scale.
And then how does it get applied? Like, how does it, so then is it a surgery or something, or is it injection?
No, it's just injections.
It's like injections, yeah. And it fixes that.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yes, it's amazing. And imagine, you think about, God, if you could just done it a year earlier or 2 years earlier, and 36,000 kids or 46,000 kids, or could have been, you just think about that. You just got to
the numbers, right?
You just got to have a glass of wine and think forward.
Right. Think forward. Yeah. Exactly. I love that. Yeah. Okay, so now you're still so heavily in medicine, really, and in science and medicine. Is there a point where you bridge over into technology, like pure tech? I know there's a data center piece around like AI and AI computing and cooling technology in this. Is that still a ways down the road, or when?
No, it's like right there.
Yeah.
Right. So I've always been a tech person.
Yeah.
Like I've always wanted to pick. I used to take the toasters apart and the phones apart and record players. I was just always tinkering and messing around. I always wanted to. That's just the way my brain's wired, I guess, good or bad. And so could have used some of that tech when I was with DoD. I can tell you that much. Be surprised how ancient that we had, the tools we had were back then.
Yeah.
And I always remember that, so.
Mil spec's not the coolest. It's just the cheapest, right?
Yeah. It's amazing what 2 dimes and a nickel could do with a phone booth. Right? I'm serious.
Right,
Yeah. We're talking ancient times, but yeah. So I was like, how do you do it better?
Yeah.
And I always thought, to a certain extent, with the right collaboration between human and machine, that technology was the way. Right? I had seen that. I was involved in some really cool technology stuff with Uncle Sam, which I never got a chance to play with, but I saw it in development. I saw what was happening in the commercial world, the private sector world, and I said, that's where I want to be. That's where we all need to be. And so, and computers is everything. High performance computing. I mean, remember when we went to the moon, supposedly, right?
Yep.
Our iPhones are like 50,000 times more powerful than the rockets and the
like a TI calculator. I think is more powerful than the rockets.
Right. So now we've got
like 1975.
Considered to them, we have a supercomputer on a phone.
Yeah.
Well, our supercomputers today are like 1 million times more powerful than our phones, and so more than that actually. But I wanted to be near that, and so everything I did in tech, I mean, in the healthcare industry and the biotech stuff, outside of like the chemistry and the mechanical stuff and whatever, it was always tech.
Yeah.
Right. So like when you're developing a process in manufacturing for pharmaceuticals, it has to be reproducible, validatable, the FDA, you have to get, licensing, it has to be IQ, PQ, installation qualification, process qualifications, all this stuff.
Yeah.
And so the more you can automate and take human error out of the factors.
Yep.
Vision systems for cracks in vials, which are all, computer-based stuff, right? Yep. So it was a perfect mesh. And what I did next was, after that, I decided to start my own company with some great people that I was involved with on the real estate side of Lonza. Yep. And they said, "Hey, JD, that was awesome what you did there. What do you want to do next?" I said, "Let's do this."
Yeah.
And I said, let's see if we can develop the next generation in high performance computing, just the computing though.
Yeah.
Let's not look at how do we deploy it yet.
Yep.
Let's just say, how do we do that? Well, one of the things that I've been very, very sensitive to is, and as an engineer, is heat. Heat is just the worst thing you could possibly do when it comes to electronics and technology.
Yep.
And so, people have spent their entire careers developing HVAC systems so that you and I don't overheat, or we don't freeze to death, or,
right.
So in electronics, and how many fires burn buildings down so I said, there's got to be a better way of this, right?
Yep.
And believe it or not, I went back and I looked at, I went and looked at some of the early testing for that divers had done, Navy divers and stuff, oxygenated fluorinated hydrocarbons. So fluids, breathing fluids in your lungs for pressurization. And like we did when we were.
I saw the movie The Abyss. They did that in that movie.
Yeah.
Right? They were breathing fluids.
And that's
like
a real thing, man.
Like when you're a baby.
I can attest to that. It's a real thing.
It's crazy.
It is. It's pretty cool.
It's pretty cool.
That first, when you think you're drowning, that's the hardest thing to overcome. But so I'm thinking of that. I'm like, hey, wait, this stuff is, so 3M was manufacturing a product. It was a fluorinated hydrocarbon. And different specific gravities were used for different things. And they are dielectric fluids. They don't conduct electricity. So, okay, really great for cooling.
Yeah.
Who's doing it? Well, there's some tests that were done early on with IBM and some early supercomputing. But the cost of the fluids and the level of computing, there wasn't enough heat coming out to really
to warrant it,
to warrant the business,
Yeah.
And so computers back then were the size of a VW bus.
Yep.
And it was just not even as good as our phones.
Yep.
But now it's all about timing. One of the things I've learned over the years is that businesses that succeed, it's not always about it's actually less often about the people and the tech. It's more often about the customer and the timing. When do these things intersect?
Yep.
Right? Demand, the need, and the tech. There's a lot of great inventions that just never took off because nobody really needed them at the time.
Yep.
Right? And so it just didn't go anywhere. So I just in my reading and my incessant need to know and learn, just made a lot of calls and talking to people and research and went through patents and said, I think there's something here. Let's apply it to something that's really hot. Bitcoin mining. Yeah.
Man, and you hear about the heat that gets generated from those bad boys.
Yeah, because a friend of mine was, and I messed with that. I built some GPU tape stuff when I just to have fun, and I made some Bitcoin with my son when we were little.
Really?
Yeah, back in like 2013, 2014, just as a side hustle fun thing. Yeah. But so I'm thinking to myself, I know how hot they get because I remember how hot my son's room used to get, right? Just the fans kicking on. I'm like, this is great. So, GPUs. And I said, well, but Bitcoin is on the SHA-256 algorithm. That uses ASIC chips. ASIC chips are made by TSMC, which is out of Taiwan, which is primarily China-based. Yeah. And all the miners are made in China, all of them. Like anything you want to use is made. Bitmain and Whatsminer and all those guys. And so I said, I can get those relatively inexpensively. I can break those down. We can have a lot of fun in the lab. And let's see how hot we can get this stuff, right? Take the fans off, immerse this stuff, full immersion.
Yeah.
And I went from single phase immersion, which means it doesn't change phase. The liquid doesn't go from a liquid to a vapor. It stays in a single state liquid. Yeah. To experimenting with two-phase dielectric fluids, which go from a single phase and then what they do is they effectively go to a second phase, or they go to a vapor phase at relatively low temperatures. So something like around 50 to 60 degrees C. Okay. And you can control that really well. You can create a closed loop ecosystem and just like circulate that through. Yeah. And because you're running temperatures that are relatively low, you can maintain the in this case, the hashing boards, which I think we were running like 12 nanometer chips, TSMC, ASIC chips, and at like 104 chips on a board, something like 100 terahash per board, which would at around 90 degrees C-ish at about 38 joules per terahash of efficiency of energy use. That was about where we were at. And so we would immerse those. We put like 100 of them together, right? And just wire them all up. It's like Frankenstein. And I had some great people like Jake Martell and Taylor Monig, these young guys who were just brilliant, brilliant guys. The three of us, supported by a really good guy who out of Houston, who was a real estate guy actually, who just got excited about what we were doing and the idea that we could do this and make some money doing it. Yeah. Anyway, so he helped us with finding the space, and then we just created, unknowingly at the time, the world's most advanced, efficient, high-performance computing system that the world had ever seen. When we finished, right before we were acquired in December of 2023, we had $150 million worth of investment in the company. Yep. We have an 11-acre campus and a roughly about a 12 megawatt data center, 150,000 square foot data center. We were hosting 5 of the largest publicly traded Bitcoin mining companies in the world in our immersion systems. And our entire payment came just in our ability to overclock their computing. And we got the overclocking Bitcoin. That's how confident we were, right? That we could make money on our systems. No one else in the world had ever done that.
So what is overclocking? You lost me right there.
No, fair enough. Okay, so like on any computer, it's set to run at a certain computing speed. Yep. Like how many gigabytes or hexabytes, and it takes X amount of energy to do that. And as a result, energy equals heat, right? So as that, you have so much heat, and they would design these systems to have fans just the right size that could rev up to just enough RPMs to get so many. You get so much cooling. Air movement through the system. So one of the reasons why servers are so friggin' big, in my opinion, I see them huge, and they have all these racks, and why these data centers are so expensive is because the heating and cooling systems, and they have raised floor, and they've got crack units and VAPCO evaporation systems is the cooling. And so what we do is we take all of that out of the mix. We get all your moving parts out. We don't care about fans. We don't care about airflow at all.
Right,
we
raised floors and all that.
We don't care. And all that expense goes away. And now you can take a server that's, say, if you had like an 8 GPU, like a Tesla V100 GPU, now they have the A100s, but V100s at the time, which is like a NVIDIA, their GPU cards that they use for graphic processing. But you could take that, and for AI use or whatever, you put 8 of them together. That thing, to cool that thing is like 10 U's, which means a U is 1.75 inches height. So you've got something that's this wide. You've got massive fans, intake fans and exit fans, and you've got to separate the GPUs, and you've got cooling coils, and you've got all kinds of stuff going on there. And it's all because you need airflow and cooling. Now they have direct to chip with pipes, and it's just the craziness. So what we did was we said, let's get rid of all that. We can keep that. We can keep the chips exactly where they want to, because we can dial it in through our automated system. We wrote our own software, and we can control the circulation of the fluids and the evaporation.
So you submerge them all.
Get rid of all the fans, and we can then speed them up. Put more energy into them while they're staying at the same temperature. Not have to worry about fan speeds and all that stuff. We had to bypass all the fan speeds to get that done. But then by the time we were finished, the companies were making them for us, like Dell and Intel and Gigabyte and NVIDIA. We were designing stuff for them that they were then commercializing so we could use them on our systems. We had to build the servers. We weren't in the server business, but we built and showed we could build these servers that nobody thought we could do, just so we could hand them over to them so that they could then make them so that we had something to put in our stuff.
Put back in there.
Right?
Wow.
Because, we needed powerful stuff to really show how awesome our systems were. So we built, we unveiled.
And then the Bitcoin companies or the blockchain companies are your customer then, and they're running on those servers.
No, they're doing that's separate. So we're doing the ASICs chipping on that stuff for the Bitcoin mining. We're turning those those miners up
Yep.
more energy.
Yep.
So let's just say their typical miner that they get from China.
Yep.
Let's just say it's a Bitmain S19J plus. I don't know. This is probably different now. That was a while back, and it runs at 110 terahash. That means, how many hashes per second
Yep.
of actual calculations on the SHA-256 algorithm in order for them to run a block to get Bitcoin,
Yep.
to get a reward as a Bitcoin on a hashing pool.
Yep.
They do that, and then what we can do is then take all that other stuff that we don't care about, the fans, the
flooring,
all of that stuff. We get rid of all that stuff,
racks.
and we could put 10 megawatts in 5,000 square feet instead of 100,000 square feet. So we cut that down, and then we put a lot more energy,
power to
and we
it.
get 200 terahashes
Yep.
out of 110.
Yep.
We would keep
You're doubling it.
we would keep
effectively,
that delta.
Yep.
They're happy because they're getting what they
Oh,
paid
you
for,
would keep the
and we get all that.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And that not
you
only
can reuse that.
not only paid for all of our infrastructure,
Yep.
but it paid our everything we wanted.
Yeah.
So it was
Incredible.
tremendously efficient. And then we
Super
just took that
innovative.
same idea and applied it to regular supercomputing. And that's when we built and unveiled for the first time the world's most powerful server. It might still be. It was a 1U blade server, which is basically 1.75 inches, maybe close to 2 inches. And it was almost 8,000 watts. And we had 16 NVIDIA Tesla V100 GPUs stacked on top of each other this close, running through NVLink system in order to, it was just, and nobody believed we could do it. And we unveiled it, and it was just awe-inspiring.
Wow.
And we did that. And they're like, wait, aren't you the cooling guys and the Bitcoin mining guys?
Yeah.
Yes, and we're applying it to this. And that's what blew us up. So we got invested. So InQtel, which is a division, which is really the investment arm of the intelligence agencies.
Yeah.
So CIA, NSA, DIA, those guys, girls, they invested in us. They became an investment partner.
Okay.
And then we got we got contracts with the
Back together with Uncle Sam. Came around
back
full circle.
together with the Uncle Sam. We got to meet all my old buddies.
Yeah.
And so they were living in our offices, and we fulfilled everything that they needed, and we got those contracts. We had Army, Navy contracts, Air Force. We got an AFWorks contract, and we were just kind of blowing up from that point on. And that's when we were working with Google and Microsoft and Amazon. Excuse me. And that's when everything kind of decided. Someone came in and said, "We need to own that.
We're going to buy that from you." And so
Modine came in. It's all over it was, you can Google it.
Sure.
They came in December and they closed the deal.
Okay. So 23. And so,
Yeah.
sold December 23, sold that,
Yes.
boom. And so,
Found myself wanting again.
yeah. And so there it is. So
Yeah.
the boredom or the desire for the new thing starts to kick in. And so I know when we talked before the show today, you mentioned you're having some like a kick-ass physical and doing the whole thing and the all-day experience. And if this is out of order, tell me. But so you're going through this experience, which is like again a high dollar, high end, physical where they're checking you from head to toe. And what you come to find out is the data that you're getting out of that is fairly useless, fairly ineffective in helping you to understand what does this really mean about my health and how healthy am I and what do I do with this information?
Yeah. So there was a pivot there, right? So back up a little bit to TMG Core. Texas Machine Group was the name of the company, TMG Core. Prior to that, I always thought I was invincible, man.
Yeah.
I think as guys,
Definitely.
just being authentic here.
Yeah.
I never really cared much. I was in good shape. I always felt healthy. And
you're fit. You're a runner.
I just always felt good.
active.
And I ate whatever I wanted to. And probably drank too much wine and too many shots of tequila over the years. I don't care. I love it. It's nothing like a shot of tequila and a sunset.
Killing it all, right? It's like,
it's just
get
whatever.
the furnace hot and you just burn it all off.
And when I wasn't feeling good, like for whatever reason, whatever, I'll just get better.
Yeah.
You and I, and I think most guys, probably most people watching this podcast, cut off the arm. I'm going to play golf.
Yeah.
Right. Put a tourniquet on it. Right. I'm going. I'm not going to the doctor.
Right. Yeah.
I hate the dentist. I hate the doctors.
Man.
Everybody dies when they go to the doctor,
Yeah.
right?
When I was at Low T Center, we talked to a lot of 40-year-old guys that were really fit, and we'd be like, all right, so when was your last physical? And they're like, let's see. When I was a senior in high school, I played football, and we had to get, I'm like, wait a minute. That was your last physical? You're 45 years old now, you know,
Yeah.
but that was a common thing, right?
Yeah.
When they left high school, that was the end of the medical
We're invincible
experience.
until we're not, right?
Yeah.
Whereas women are, like my wife, are worried well, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so I don't go to get physicals ever. It wasn't until my board and my shareholders basically said, JD, you know, and this was probably a year, just 2 years just prior to the sale of the company. They said, we're blowing up. This is happening, you know, because we were about to go public before the market crash, or whatever. So we had Guggenheim and all those guys behind us. And if something happens to you, you know, so Keyman Insurance.
Do you know Insurance Writer?
Yeah,
Right? Keyman Insurance.
So
like,
they got,
we gotta check them
they
out.
would try to get they were getting a $50 million Keyman Insurance policy on me.
Yeah.
And they required me to go get physical. So I went to the #1 clinic, certainly in Texas,
Yep.
arguably maybe in the United States.
Yep.
Best tech, best doctors. It's a country club, basically. They don't take insurance,
Yep.
oddly enough. I'm going there to get insurance, but they don't take insurance. But fine, because we can get a whole nother
Right.
insurance scam world, right?
Yes.
But so it's a cash pay, concierge, whatever. So I go there. It costs about 10 to 15K, depending on, you know, I would go every quarter.
Yep.
Because a large $50 million policy, they go every quarter, right?
Yep. 10 to 15K per experience.
So I'd get
per
there at
event.
6 a.m, right?
Yep.
So I was prepped, right? I'd have to fast the night before.
Yep.
And then I'd get there at 6 a.m. I'd be in my tracksuit basically. And, you know, I would go from one test to the next test to the next. It was a wonderful experience.
Yeah.
To be catered to like that. It was wonderful. It was red carpet. And I'd see people like Michael Dell there and, you know, like a whole bunch of other people.
Yep.
I will just leave them. You know,
Big hitters, yeah.
yeah, but Michael's public about this because whatever.
Yep.
And we get there, we do treadmill tests.
Yep.
We do EKGs or ECGs. We do scans. I would lay it on take all my clothes off and lay on a table, and a dermatologist would walk in and flip me around and look at wherever creases,
tabs,
whatever,
whatever.
you
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
and then he'd burn that stuff off right there.
Right there, right on.
I mean, it was like a production facility. And blood work, and I would, you know, and masks, and you name it, I did it. Turn your head and cough.
Yep.
Probe up there.
Right on.
The whole deal.
All right.
And
Paid extra.
eye exams. I mean, the whole deal. Like looking at your teeth, make sure that because they can look at if your gums or whatever, if you might have something.
Right.
Blood work. Everything came back the same day.
Yeah.
And so by 6 o'clock at night, 12 hours of this pokes and prods, whatever. Then they sit you down. They give you, what would you like? Would you like some whatever?
You want a steak?
Yeah,
red
steak,
wine,
whatever.
I
I was just like, I just want to go home, man. Right? And they give me a pamphlet, a big stack of like to walk away with.
about
Like,
you.
there's a $10,000 thump factor.
3-ring
right?
binder, right?
Yeah. So, and I'd get home. Well, they tell me like, your blood pressure is good. You passed the treadmill test, no problem. Your cholesterol's high.
Yeah.
That's a risk factor. Your age is a risk factor. You're not fat.
Yeah.
Because they did the whole pincher thingy,
Sure.
whatever, and weigh you in water and float you and all that.
They do in the GE. What's the GE scanner? They do like the what's the name of it? It's basically a fat scanner. They put you on the table, and then you get this picture back of yourself.
Yeah, I got all that.
Yeah,
I did all of that. Yeah, it was so it was pretty awesome. But you know, basically they said, you know, outside of this,
DEXA-scan. That's the one.
DEXA-scan. Yeah, I did that. Yeah. But the only thing, you know, so at the end of the day, they'd be like, you know, you don't meet the criteria for medication. You don't hit some percentage, and I don't even remember exactly what they said. And they did it every time. And this went on for, you know, a couple of years. And I would come home and I've got this, I still have them, stacks of, in my library at my home, stacks of these binders of my health. And it really didn't change except my cholesterol kept going up. That's it. But there's basically, look good. I had no symptoms. So fast forward, I'm in the middle of this deal. I'm planes, trains, and automobiles. I'm trying to fire lawyers because they're trying to scuttle a deal. You know how it goes, right? And so I'm stressed out. I'm not sleeping enough. I'm definitely drinking too much. And I'm eating terribly because I'm eating at restaurant. I'm doing deal minute, you know, and we're all like, let's have the steak, you know,
right.
You know, why not?
Every night,
You know, like,
right.
Yeah, and I found out it really wasn't the steak, but
get the lobster tonight.
Get the lobster. Go to the lobster.
Enjoy the lobster.
Plants,
it's beautiful.
You know? Yeah, exactly. So here I am, and I'm doing this, and I go to a party, and this is what saved my life. I happen to fortunately live across the street from a cardiologist who happens to be a very good friend of mine. And we actually work together. He's my chief strategy officer now at ClearCardio. Yeah. And I go to a party. It's on a Saturday night. I had been traveling. I just flew in that afternoon. I've been going all day. And my wife and I go over there, and I bring a bottle of wine, and there's a couple hundred people here. It's a huge house. And so we go in there, and he looks at me. I walk in there. He goes, JD, what's going on with you? I'm like, what are you talking about? I feel great. Yeah. I'm like tired, whatever. He goes, you need to come see me. Because these guys know. He's an interventional cardiologist, which means he sees people when they're about to have a heart attack or they're having a heart attack. Because he puts the stents and the caths and balloons and all that stuff.
Mechanical
and parts and all that. And if that doesn't work, they open you up and they give you the big zipper. They crack you open. And
like a lobster.
Like a lobster. Yeah. and then, and a lot of these guys die on the table, man.
Yeah, man.
But, and it costs you that, if you just talk economics, because I like economics, just a heart cath alone is 20 to 30K. Yeah. And they've put a stent or balloon, now you're at 100. And if they do a bypass, it's $500,000 nowadays. Yeah. It's craziness.
Crazy.
So he takes me in, he looks at me and says, JD, you don't look good. You need to come in. Yep. So he takes me down to Carrollton Regional Medical Center, which is a fantastic hospital and medical center, by the way. Yep. And I've become very good friends with the owner.
Good to know. Yeah, good.
Yeah. And it's actually where ClearCardio, we have a clinic there inside the hospital now. Yeah. And so if any of your members want to come down, come check us out.
For sure.
But so he takes me in there and he introduces me to this doctor, Dr. John Osborne, who I think is on your podcast, right?
He is. Yes,
good.
indeed.
He's an awesome guy to talk to.
Yeah.
Really genius guy and a great
funny guy too. And
yes,
and
he's funny. Yeah, he's funny, and he lets me drink wine, which is awesome.
Just small amounts, right? He told me. Amounts, I quizzed him on all that.
Yeah, and I get a little steak once in a while. Yeah. But he comes in like he didn't have to come in on a Sunday morning now, right? They take me literally in the back door, and rush me through, and he says you got to meet Dr. Kazori, Dr. Orjo Kazori, says you have to meet Dr. John Osborne. And I said, okay, great. And I'm starting to get nervous here. I'm like, what's going on, guys? I feel okay. We want you to see this. I found out later they had kind of an alternative motive as well, which was great for me, which is hence why ClearCardio exists. So they bring me in, and it takes a bunch of blood work, and then they put me into this scanner, which is like, give me a contrast and all that stuff. And it took like 10 minutes. Like in and out. I thought it was going to be there all day. And I was so dreading this, right? In and out. I was more doing it as a favor to my buddy, my friend, right? My neighbor. And so I'm in and out in 10 minutes. And I'm sitting in this little lounge, and he puts it up on the screen, and there I am. It's my autopsy, but I'm not dead yet.
Picture of your heart.
And it's a 3-dimensional, incredibly, and I'm a tech guy, and I've been doing this my whole life, and I'm going,
just a rich
wow.
Picture.
I was just blown away at the detail. And then he started just dissecting it like an exploded view as an engineer. When you're looking at working on an engine or something
pulling it apart,
there's an exploded view, right? He just, whoops, I just hit the mic. He goes, boom, and there it is. And he starts showing me all this stuff. And then he rolls into the AI application. And he's like, by the way, this is not the standard of care. What you're seeing here is behind the curtain. You're looking at medicine in 30 years.
Oh, wow.
And I said, okay. And I started really paying attention. And my entrepreneurial, my engineering, my curiosity, everything that had got me to that point in my life just came rushing back at me. And I went, and I was looking at this, and I forgot how long we were there, maybe an hour. And it turns out that I had stage 2 arterial, plaque
heart
disease.
Yep.
And not just that, but it was in a very bad area. It was something called the Widowmaker.
Oh, wow.
So, and what they call it the Widowmaker is because it's in an area that's just above 3 forks or 3 other arteries that feed into that one larger artery. Yep. So if this larger one plugs, all that goes, so you can't just bypass one. Yep. So that's why it's usually fatal. You
go down. That's like John Ritter, I think, had Widowmaker just straight down, gone.
Is that what it was?
Yeah, I think so.
I didn't know that. But sorry. But yeah, so here I am looking at something that I have that I just spent probably $250,000, $300,000 dealing with with the best clinic,
Yep.
and yet
I had no clue.
I had no clue. And immediately I got very angry.
Yeah.
And I wanted to like make a phone call right away.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Like, I was about to stroke out and die.
Yeah. Well, the first thing I was going to call was the clinic, and the second company I was going to call was the insurance company and say, don't ever send anybody there because you guys are going to lose a bunch of money. I was worried about the shareholders of the insurance company, actually, because my mind went there.
Yeah.
Like they shouldn't be insuring somebody like pilots. Think about pilots that are going through this stuff. Not only the passengers on the plane,
200 people on the plane,
right? But what about the insurance company and the shareholders of the company, of the airline, and all that stuff? When they find out this guy has a massive heart attack, right? Because they're not doing this.
Yeah,
they're doing what I did. Best clinics. If they're lucky, they're doing that stuff.
Yeah,
right. Typical guy does a stress test and EKG, and he looks great if he even goes. Well, they require pilots are required to go. So
sure,
but still, they're not doing anything. So they don't really know.
Yeah.
Here I am. So I go through this kind of process of being angry, wanting to reach out, and then I go to acceptance, and I'm like, okay, and then I go to fear, like, okay, now what? And so it was then that made the difference.
Yeah.
Like knowing now, okay, now I know. Okay, now what can I do about it? And Dr. Osborne and with Dr. Kazori's support gave me a roadmap and said, you don't have any blockages right now, but you have plaque buildup in your arteries, in the artery walls around this area. I think it was my plaque count was like 270 or 280, which is a level 2, lower end of level 2. So it wasn't like you need
there's 4 levels, right? 4?
There's three levels.
So that's not
So I don't have severe, I have moderate, but lower moderate.
Yeah.
But still, for me, that was unacceptable.
That's a lot.
That was unacceptable.
That's not good.
Yeah. So I was there, and they said, here's what we need to do.
Yeah. And that plan was, so they had now a way to attack this plaque, right?
Yeah, because they did the blood work, and they did this, blood work that preventive cardiologists do because of all the indicators, because they had this incredible imaging, and then they had this AI analysis on top of that, which is it was incredible. They could put a customized plan specifically for my type of plaque, because I found out there's all kinds of different types of plaque.
Yeah.
And if you can calcify it, it's stable. It can't kill you.
Yeah.
And they can make it so that you never have a heart attack or stroke in your lifetime. And so I immediately said, okay, I'm going to do that. And I'm one of those guys where, and I know not everybody is, but I'm one of those guys that if there's a problem, I'm going to do everything I can to fix it. Right? Because all I can think about is my wife's going to be a widow. My kids aren't going to have the parents. And I just spent, I'm 57.
Yeah.
So I just spent a lot of my life building, credibility and wealth and all these things, and it's gone.
Yep.
Right. And so
because bad medical diagnosis, something that could be fixed, prevented, reversed.
Because it's antiquated and it's broken, and it's all risk-based reactiveness, and in our entire country's that way.
Yep.
It's a reactive pay for services instead of being proactive. We're one of the only countries in the world that is that way.
Yep.
When you go to other countries around the world, like Switzerland and most of Europe and Portugal, they reward you for being proactive.
Yeah.
They penalize you for being reactive.
Yeah.
And so I immediately saw that this has to become the standard of care. And that was the birth of ClearCardio. I didn't know what I was going to call it at the time.
Yep.
But I talked to Dr. Osborne and Dr. Kazori, and I asked them.
Yep.
I said, why isn't this the standard of care? Why are, and I did all the research. I read every book. I called all my friends. I flew to California. I sat at a think tank. I hired people to do a deep dive. I wanted to know the real facts and statistics. And so I found out, why do half of all people who have a heart attack or stroke die? And why do 75% of Americans have heart disease? And why?
Yep.
And to find out that it's all preventable.
Yep.
In every single case, regardless of what causes heart disease, you can prevent it through diet, exercise, and by knowing that you have a propensity genetically, by knowing that these risk factors, and by actually taking the scan. and you can reverse. So because there is a cure, it's medications, it's diet, it's exercise, it's lifestyle, and it's aggressive attack to it.
Yep, and it's and I think in talking with Dr. Osborne, he's shared that heart disease or death by heart incident, stroke and heart attack, is more prevalent than the next 7 disease states combined, including all the cancers and the things that you think about. So it is the number one killer in the United States.
It's staggering.
Staggering, right?
Yeah.
And so the things that you talk about, like diet, exercise, good nutrition, don't smoke, all those things, we know that. We've been told that for years. But the reality is until you do the scan, and with the technology of the AI technology that's come on so strongly, you don't really get the view to know, man, is that diet and exercise? You could be a really healthy guy like you or I, like you're a triathlete, you're an Ironman, all these things, but you had a heart that was very sick, and you would have never known it.
A lot of athletes drop dead. A lot of people, I think there's going to be a podcast coming up, a ClearCardio podcast about this. The mirror doesn't know if you have heart disease. Your coach, your personal trainer has no idea if you have plaque in your arteries. So no matter how good you look or feel, I mean, statistically, you won't have a symptom until you're about 70% blocked. That's insane.
And often then the first symptom is the heart attack, right?
And half of that time it's death, heart attack or stroke.
Yeah.
Because a stroke, 80% of the time, your heart attack or stroke is based on ischemia, which means it's a Greek word that means like the restriction of, the reduction of oxygen. Right? So 80% of the time you have a heart attack or stroke. Half of the time, half of the people that have a heart attack or stroke, their first symptom is death.
Yeah, it's crazy.
That's insane.
It's insane.
And that means something like 22 million people a year around the world die of heart attacks and stroke. Yeah, 7 times of all this cancers, everything included, combined, don't equal how many people have a heart attack or stroke.
Yeah, it's crazy. So knowing your background, the talk that we've had, and all the great things that you've done and innovative, how you've now created ClearCardio. What's the plan for ClearCardio? I can't believe it's a small plan, so it's got to be a big one.
No, my mission is no one should ever die of a heart attack or stroke. In my lifetime, I would like to save at least 100,000 lives in my lifetime.
That's awesome.
I would like to be able to show that I saved 100,000 lives in my lifetime. And I think we as a company, we have some great people like Sherry Thacker, who's head of marketing and sales, Kenton, who's, patient management. We've got some great people. And we all share that, goal. Because if we could do that, come on.
Yeah.
If we can save 100,000 lives.
And I know when we talked before today, you said something about, I've been in the business of saving the world, right? Or saving this millions and millions.
I thought tried to,
right? And now you're focused, like, I want to save a life. I want to save an individual, a person.
I got very focused.
Very focused on one man or one woman, and then growing it from there to 2 to 3, but individual, like make a difference in a human's life. It's a powerful passion.
I think this will be the first, it's a great observation. I think this will be the first time I can actually say, I'll be able to save someone's life. Dr. Osborne saved my life. And I've seen him save other people's lives. And we have now close to 500 patients. And I've seen patients, friends of mine, colleagues that I've convinced to come in. I had to make bets. I'll bet you, I've got a friend who is, if you saw him, you'd say, wow, that guy's in great shape.
Fit guy.
Like he's muscle builder dude. Like, he's in his late 40s. He's just that guy, drives a Ferrari, married, great kids kind of thing. And he's got, all the money in the world.
All the resources. Can get
cyber company. I said, I'll bet you, it'll be free. You come in, because we don't take insurance, because we don't deal with the insurance companies. We focus on, taking care of you in the best way we can. And it's not that expensive, quite frankly. We're not even close to the clinic I used to go to, which did nothing for me, by the way.
Right.
We give you answers and we treat you. So I said, hey, I'll bet you this will be free for you if you have no plaque. If you have plaque, you got to pay.
Yeah, right.
And then you've got to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
And the way we tell you to. Sure enough.
Plaque.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right on. Saved a life right there, maybe.
Yeah.
Right on.
Yes. Yeah. It's amazing. I would say over 95% of the people who have come in have, stage 2 or stage 3.
Wow.
Yeah.
Incredible.
It's crazy.
Man, what a fabulous conversation, JD. It's been awesome.
Likewise.
It's been awesome. I love hearing your story.
Thank you.
Great
being here.
Love the innovation.
Yeah.
What's next for ClearCardio? Where are you headed? What are you excited about?
So we're continuing to expand, take on patients. We're going to be opening up new clinics here in Texas, and then we're expanding outwards, looking at Dubai and Abu Dhabi as well, and London and Amman and a few other places. But again, here in the U.S., go to the NFL cities, right? We want to go to the populated places,
right.
but and also make it easy for other people outside the populated cities. But we have to go where the business goes first. Right. It's just the way it works. But yeah, that's our goal is to save 100,000 lives.
Right on.
As fast as we can. I'd be happy with 1 million.
Yeah.
Right. I'm happy with 1, quite frankly. When you set a goal to save the world, it's really hard to attain that because, what are the steps to do that?
Right.
Well, when you set a goal as specific and strategic as let me just save that life, then that's attainable.
Right. Yeah, I love it, and I love your history. You've set bold goals, but then you've always exceeded them. Right. It's always the visions always end up being bigger, and I'm confident you'll look back and go, I was going to save 100,000 lives, I saved 1 million, or I saved whatever it is. But just a fabulous innovator. I love hearing your story, man. I so appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, and I love your show, by the way.
Oh, thank you so much for that. I appreciate that. Where can people find you? Where can they connect with you or find ClearCardio? What's the web address?
Super easy. Just go to www.clearcardio.com. CLEAR cardio.com.
All right. All right. I love it, man. It's fabulous having you on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Appreciate you, JD. Awesome, man. So great to have you here. To our audience, thank you for taking time to listen. Appreciate you taking time out of your busy day to do that. If you would share the program with a friend, write us a nice review, give us a star rating, all those things help us reach a broader audience. Until next time, friends, I'm Eric Sardina. You've been listening to the Return to Authenticity podcast, and bye for now.